Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sophia Carey. If you guys are new to the channel, then I am a fashion photographer and graphic designer from the UK. So in today's video, I thought what I'd do is go over some content that kind of is applicable for any creative, whether or not you're a photographer or a graphic designer or a fashion designer or, you know, whatever kind of visual artist you are, this kind of content is applicable for you. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about colour and how, as a visual artist, you use colour. Particularly for graphic designers, illustrators, photographers, the use of colour is probably one of the main components of your image. I've spoken about this a lot in my Skillshare classes and in my other YouTube videos. But for me, colour and composition are probably more important than all of the technical stuff as to like shutter speed and, you know, actually knowing how to use your camera. So I'm going to break today's video into 5 sections. The colour wheel, colour theory, colour psychology, pairing colours, and how we can use colour theory and psychology and all this kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about specifically as a photographer. So for this video, we're just going to use a lot of on-screen graphics. So if you guys want to kind of follow along and take some notes, that's probably the best way to kind of interact with this. So your colour wheel is essentially like what it sounds like. It's a wheel of colours. If you think back to your like primary education and when you're a kid and you're learning about colours and you're learning that, you know, if you mix certain colours, you make new colours. If you mix red and yellow, you make orange and stuff like that. That is essentially the foundation of the colour wheel. When you mix red and yellow, it makes orange. When you mix yellow and blue, it makes green. And when you continue to mix all these colours, it kind of fills out that little colour wheel. So when we're talking about colours, we are usually talking about 3 things: hue, saturation, and value. Hue refers to the actual colour, so the red or the orange or the green or the blue. The saturation is the intensity of that hue, and the value refers to kind of the brightness of it. So we kind of have 2 sections of a value, and that is a tint, which is a hue mixed with a white, which makes a brighter hue, and a hue mixed with a black, which makes a darker hue, and that is your shade. Really, that is the foundation of the colour wheel. Colour theory refers more specifically to how you kind of use those colours in harmony, or how you use those colours to kind of create certain visual effects. I have spoken briefly about colour theory on this channel before. We've spoken about specifically in photography how you might use different kind of theories to create cohesion in your work, but in this video I'm going to really break down some of those colour theories. So one of my favourite colour combinations as such is the monochromatic. Monochromatic refers to when you pick one hue and use a variety of saturations and hues to create a colour scheme. This doesn't necessarily mean that your colour scheme is attention grabbing, but it can be soothing or relaxing because of the lack of contrast in it. And this lack of contrast allows us to kind of browse over it easier and interpret it. Next up, we're going to be talking about analogous. Analogous refers to the colours on the wheel that are next to each other. So for example, we could say, you know, red and orange and then yellow. Complementary colours are one of my favourite kind of things to use, and that really simply refers to the colours opposite each other on the colour wheel. So for example, it might be red and green. That's a really common one. Split complementary is essentially either side of the opposite to create a kind of triangle shape. So this gives you the same amount of contrast as the complementary colours, which is quite high in contrast, but it increases the variety a little bit. Triadic colours are also quite similar. So triadic colours refer to 3 colours on the colour wheel that are evenly split up, if that makes sense. So I'll show you on the diagram, but that forms a perfect triangle. These colours tend to create quite an intense kind of look, so just be mindful of that and careful with how you use them. Tetradic, another word that I'm not 100% on how to pronounce, but tetradic Colour schemes refer to 4 colours on the wheel that create a rectangle. This colour scheme is really useful if you use one of the 4 colours as your dominant colour and then the other 3 as accents. I will put another example on the screen. That is really the basics of colour theory and using the colour wheel to create cohesion, to create colours that work in harmony with each other. Next up, I want to talk to you guys about colour psychology. So if you think about the idea of visual communication, that's something that if you do graphic design or something, you might hear it being referred to as graphic communication. The term visual communication kind of sums up colour psychology, I guess. Each colour that you use sends a message, communicates something to your audience. So for example, bright colours tend to, you know, seem a bit more like fun, uplifting, and desaturated ones tend to be, I don't know, you might use them in more of a professional context. Of course, the way that these colours are interpreted does depend on the context, but that's just like a generalisation of how they might be interpreted. Not only do they carry these connotations, but colours actually have an ability to affect your mind and change the way that you think. So whilst blue is a colour that is associated with loyalty and trust, it's also considered quite a corporate colour, and that is mostly to do with the fact that some studies suggest that the colour blue can actually increase your productivity. So for example, if you painted your office blue, or you set your, I don't know, your laptop background to blue, you might be more inclined to be productive. On like a similar kind of vein, I guess, I also read an article about how the colour red is used to promote hunger. So for example, places like KFC, McDonald's, a lot of fast food chains use the colour red in their branding to kind of like, you know, you go in there, it encourages you feeling hungry. It's a very stimulating colour, so that probably would kind of explain that, but it could also be used to connote things like danger and threat. So again, you do have to be mindful of how you use that. An interesting thing about the colour red is that it has a really long wavelength. So this means that it easily catches people's attention, and yellow is another colour that has a similar effect. Whilst on the topic of yellow, and we're talking about colour psychology, yellow can also make babies cry, apparently. So that's why it's suggested you don't paint your baby's walls yellow. Fast food restaurants, again, often use the colour yellow because it promotes kind of a sense of irritability and makes people want to get up and leave quickly. So, you know, if you're painting the walls of your fast food restaurant yellow, people come in, get the food, get out quick, and churn through more customers and fast food, I guess. So now we've kind of briefly spoken about the ways in which you can use colour to create a mood or to create harmony within your work. What are some tips on actually putting them together and using them? Number 1 is don't use too many colours. Using too many colours can often be overstimulating or confusing, and the viewer won't really know where to look. You really want to avoid this, and you know, less is more. Similarly, too much intensity or saturation can be visually overwhelming, so I'd avoid putting a lot of highly saturated colours together. That brings me on to using contrast. Contrast is a great tool to utilise, and if you want to make sure that your image has enough contrast, you can switch it to black and white, and that will kind of help you out on that front. If you don't allow enough contrast, you can get something that's called vibrating colours, and this is when colours seem to kind of vibrate. If you want to keep these colours but you just want to create more contrast, you could always try playing around with either the saturation or the value. Similarly, you can use black, white and grey as good colours to help your other colours kind of stand out. So now we've gone over the basics, how can we use these things that we've learned as a photographer? So something that's used often in cinematography is considering how colours can set a mood. How can you use colour psychology to choose your colours and communicate a way in which you want your audience to feel? Similarly, are the colours in your photos actually communicating the right mood? Like, is it a sad story that you're kind of trying to tell, but you're using a lot of like really, you know, optimistic yellows and like, what is the kind of tonality of your image telling the audience? You might also want to think about how you can use colour theory to create cohesion throughout your work. How can you use these things that we've spoken about on the colour wheel to kind of make your images look more aesthetically pleasing? Something that I use a lot is monochromatic colour schemes and occasionally complementary colours within my photography. I will put some examples up here so you guys can have a look. Another way to use colour in your work is to develop your colour palettes before you shoot. So for example, when I mood board, occasionally I will be like, right, these are the colours that I want to incorporate within my shoot. And then you can focus your locations, your styling, etc. around those colours to create more cohesive look. Not only can you use like the actual shoot to do that, but you can also incorporate those colours into your editing, for example with split toning or something like that. A good reason to kind of develop these colour palettes in the first place is to create cohesion throughout the whole body of your work. So if there is, you know, if you want like your Instagram feed to have a real cohesion and it flow really nicely, then using the same colours throughout all your images or here or thereabouts is going to create that kind of nice flow that you're looking for. But yeah, that's all from me today. I just really wanted to go over the basics. Colour is a big part of my practice as a designer and a photographer. And I think it would benefit a lot of people to kind of start thinking about colour in their work. If you already use colour in your work or you have other tips that you want to share, let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion about that. Remember to subscribe and turn on that little notification bell to keep updated with my videos. I've got a ton of content coming up soon. As ever, I welcome your suggestions and recommendations. So let me know in the comments what you want to see from this channel. But until then, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.
KSN Beats.